Hey, I'm Roland, and we're taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S10 5G. So that's the untouchable phone that wasn't available during the pre-briefs. All the US guys got all the briefing time they wanted and weren't really able to do anything with it because they weren't allowed to touch it. You could take pictures of it, but only from the back. They weren't allowed to turn them on, and right here on the show floor they actually have working samples. Those are kind of limited samples because you can't use the 5G yet. There's a bunch of demos, but those are in very controlled environments. But I still want to show you these prototypes of the S10 5G. So what you get is basically a massive 5G capable Samsung Galaxy S10, which is different in a bunch of ways except from the modem that's in here. So you have a 6.7-inch screen on the front. That's a Super AMOLED or Dynamic AMOLED screen from Samsung, capable of HDR10 Plus and everything else. So it's all the same tech or specs basically for the screen that you also get on the smaller models. It runs at a resolution of I think 3040 by 1440 pixels, so it's definitely super high res. It has the same slightly bent curves, so you get these reflections in when you go out in the sun, which are kind of annoying to a bunch of people, like me for example. So you might want to consider getting just a S10e because that has actually a flat screen, but that's not what this is about. So you basically end up with pretty small bezels. You have the loudspeaker up here, that's one of the front-facing speakers. The other speaker is down here at the bottom, integrated into the frame, just like on the other models. The bezels are pretty small, but not the smallest. There is a bit of symmetry because Samsung is taking the front-facing speaker and putting it up there at the top. But a main difference between the S10 5G and the S10 Plus is the front-facing cameras. So you have this 10 megapixel front-facing camera right here. There's dual pixel autofocus and everything else, but there's also the depth sensor integrated right here. So it's a time-of-flight system that basically measures the time that the light takes from being cast out to travel back. So this way you can realize some pretty interesting live focus effects in this case. The notch up here, or not the notch, but the punch hole there is also a bit wider than on the regular Galaxy S10 because you have the additional sensor that's in there. So that's why it's kind of looking a bit wider in this case. Under the hood you have the Snapdragon 855 Optical SoC from Qualcomm that runs at up to 2.84 gigahertz combined with the STX50 5G modem in the US. In Europe and the rest of the world you'll probably end up with the Exynos 9820, which is running at I think up to 2.7 gigahertz. And I can just quickly check this on my lovely helper here in my phone. So it's an 8nm SoC from Samsung that runs at 2.7 gigahertz maximum. You have another bunch of cores that run at 2.3 gigahertz and power saving cores are at 1.7 gigahertz. Also, the reason this isn't called S10 Plus 5G is probably because of the memory size. This only has 8 gigs of RAM and 256 of storage, and I think there's no extension slot for extending the memory. That's a difference towards the Plus model, which has up to 12 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of internal memory plus the extension slot there. Let's move over to the sides here and have a quick look, because here you can see that this is definitely not a final model. There's a bit of a gap here between the back cover and the phone part itself, so the cover is probably not made of ceramic or glass in this case. Those are probably just plastic covers because these are still prototypes. There's also a bit of a design difference here with these the buttons integrated like this over here. They feel pretty sturdy. This is your Bixby button. That's your volume rocker right there. And at the top you have the SIM card slot. Plus this is an antenna band right there. And there is your noise cancelling microphone. Going over to the other side, this is where your power button is, and there's pretty much nothing on that side. And at the bottom, that's where your speaker is, plus your USB Type-C port, charging that 4500 milliamp hour battery with up to 25 watts, and there's your 3.5mm headset jack. Now moving over to the back. This is getting really interesting over here because that's where all the sensors are. There's much more stuff than on pretty much any other phone that I've seen so far, except maybe for the Nokia 9. It just got announced with 5 cameras on the back. This actually has 4 cameras, but only 3 of them are actual cameras, because the 4th one is again this time-of-flight depth sensor that's also on the front. So you end up pretty much with the same setup that you also get on the S10 Plus, except you also get the depth sensor. So there's a 12 megapixel wide-angle camera. That's your main camera. That's the one that's capable of very fast focusing. Thanks to dual pixel autofocus, it has a variable aperture going from 1.5 to 2.4, just like on the S9, for example. It does have an optical image stabilization system, which also goes for the and the telephoto lens also has optical image stabilization plus 12 megapixels and a face detection autofocus, but the aperture is only at 2.4. There's also the ultra-wide sensor in here. That's a fixed focus sensor having a 2.2 aperture and 123 degrees of viewing angle, or the field of view is actually 123 not megapixels, but degrees wide. That sensor has 16 megapixels. So that's just been a very quick look at the Samsung Galaxy S10 5G in this case. And what I'm going to do is basically show you a bit about the software. So we're definitely running the new Android Samsung One UI in this case, and that one's based on Android 9.0, and here you can see the model number just so you believe me that this is definitely the new model, the 5G model, because this is the SMG 977 in this case. What I'm going to do is basically just show you a quick tour through the software, and in this case specifically switching through the cameras here. So we have the super wide angle right now, there's your regular camera in this case, and this is the zoom or focus or telefocus camera on here. And what you can do with that sensor that I told you about that's on the back there is, as you can see, you can do different effects and have them rendered in real time. So basically you can adjust the intensity of the effect, and then you can basically just switch through here, and then you can use these effects to actually do different stuff with them depending on what object is in the front here. So what we're going to do is basically, I'm just going to hold my hand here, and as you can see, my hand stays in focus pretty much, and the rest of the stuff that's in the picture basically gets blurred out. So that's pretty much the main reason they have this time of flight sensor on the back here. So that's just been a very quick look at the Samsung Galaxy S10 5G here at MWC 2019.